So welcome everybody to the first Learning from Leaders session of 2022. My name is Ryan Whalen. I'm a director at the Yale Center for Customer Insights. And for those of you who are new to us, the Learning from Leaders series features leaders in academia and industry across marketing functions who share their expertise on the changing world of marketing and insights. Today, we're very excited to host Mark Roberge. Mark is a senior lecturer in the Entrepreneurial Management Unit at Harvard Business School and a managing director at Stage 2 Capital. Previously, Mark served as the chief revenue officer at HubSpot, where he helped increase revenue over 6,000% and expanded a team from 1 to 450 employees. He's also the best-selling author of an award-winning book, The Sales Acceleration Formula, has been featured in publications such as the Wall Street Journal and Forbes magazine. Before I hand it over to Mark for his talk, I'll ask folks to please share some questions for Mark as we go through in the Q&A function. You'll see it at the bottom of the screen under Q&A, and we'll pick some questions for the Q&A portion. But as Mark mentioned, please also feel free to jump in with some questions along the way, unmute yourself, and feel free to interrupt Mark with a question if you have it. He might also pose some questions to the group as he goes.
Great. Is that good, Ryan?
That's good. Hand
Awesome.
it over to you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for being here. Excited to take you some of the work today. Yeah, right off the bat, if there's just general questions you have for me, throw them in there. I think Ryan did a good job of my overview background. Even though I spent a lot of time in an academic setting today, I have much more of an operating background, more on the entrepreneurship side. Started a handful of companies, the most recent being HubSpot, where I was the fourth employee and ran the whole go-to-market function through the IPO. So definitely do a lot of work and experience with just some of the modern ways of doing both sales and marketing. So if any questions come up there, if you want perspective, I'd love to. They don't have to be relevant to our speech today. Just throw them in there. I'd love to kind of talk them through with you. After the IPO in 2014, I did join the faculty at Harvard Business School full-time and, taught sales, marketing, entrepreneurship, and actually spent every quarter choosing a different company to help with their sales work. Most of them were B2B software startups. Today, they've, some of them have been successful companies like Asana, companies like Drift, companies like Catalent and Salsify that are all in the unicorn status. Some of them are public, and got to really see them at the early days of sales and how they scaled up. So happy to comment there. And I did do some work for folks like BCG as well as a senior advisor. So that work tended to be more with, companies that were doing 100, billions in revenue and, tens of thousands of employees, and sometimes in non-technical industries, on the consumer side, on the manufacturing side. So happy to kind of comment on that and compare and contrast. And then the last 3 years, as Ryan mentioned, I have moved into the venture capital arena, which is backed away from my BCG and advisory and board work, and invest in B2B software companies that are around $1 million in revenue, looking to scale them up to IPO. So hopefully, if any questions come up around that, I'd love to talk about them. Today, our title slide is Predictable Scalable Revenue Growth. I can be more specific than that. What we're going to talk about is how medium to large organizations bring new products to market, and some methodologies, some frameworks that I've seen work, two in particular, one called the Ambidextrous Organization by Michael Tushman, and one that I've created over the last 8 years called the Science of Scaling. And I'm going to use HubSpot actually as a case study. We brought at the time when when this case study is happening, it's about 2012 or 13. HubSpot is a marketing SaaS product at the time, right? So it helped companies largely small businesses, run their entire online marketing from blogging to social media to email marketing, et cetera. And the company made a strategic decision to move into the sales tech stack and introduce a CRM, right? So at the time, we were probably like 100+ million in revenue, a couple thousand employees, and we wanted to move into a whole new category. And we did it, and it went well. And a couple of years later, I stumbled across Tushman's research, and I was like, oh my gosh, we followed his framework almost to the T. How interesting. defined it afterwards. So I found it very practical and have used it in many cases to help organizations bring new products to market. So his framework helps us to understand, avoid some common potholes that organizations make. And then I'll embed my science of scaling framework within there. And that largely helps us understand when precisely are we ready to go from ideation development stage to scale stage? When precisely? Because I do find that people are not as quantitative and precise on that. And when we decide to do that, how fast should we scale? Whether on the B2B front, it's adding salespeople, or on the B2C front, it's adding marketing spend, et cetera. Right. So that's what we're going to dive into. Again, throw questions in there. So when I think about bringing new products to market, I can even actually generalize it broader than that. I feel like that's one of three options when we look for new growth opportunities. Yes, bringing a new product to market is certainly an opportunity. I've got an example here where a lot of B2B legacy software companies are moving into the cloud as an example. But the growth opportunities could actually represent markets as well. You know, we could be a company that largely does revenue with big companies and we want to move into the small business arena. We could be a consumer company that largely does business with one particular demographic and want to move into a new one. And I've found that this methodology helps there. And same with moving into different channels. We may do a lot of our revenue acquisition through an outside sales team, but in order to compete today, we want to bring some of that inside and call on marketing generated leads that we convert into customers without ever meeting them. Critical for a COVID world and hard to do for some of these legacy companies out there. And all of these would require this. I think this framework applies very nicely. So one of the underlying premises of Tushman's work and my observations is, as companies take on one of these growth channels, and I'm just going to use expanding into a new product throughout the conversation, just to keep it simple. I find that early stage entrepreneurs are very good to differentiate between the learning phase and the scaling phase, thanks to the work of like Eric Ries and Steve Blank and lean startup and minimal viable products and agile development and building products hand in hand with customers and feedback and iterating and experimenting. We don't do what we did in the late 90s and come up with some idea and sell vaporware. We actually do a good job of navigating. I never meet an entrepreneur that has an idea and like, oh, I'm going to do 2 million in revenue next year. It's an irrelevant conversation. It's like, let's figure out how we build an MVP and see if it works. But for some reason, when a company gets to 10, 50, 100, 500 million in revenue, and they're looking ahead to next year's expectation and growth, and their current core businesses, when they stretch out the spreadsheets, it only gives them 80% of that expected growth. Someone sits around the table like, I have an idea. Let's expand. Let's build a new product and sell that into the install base. And that will make up for the other 20% of revenue that we need. And I think that's where the problem starts. And they all do it. Why, as an entrepreneur, do you sit there and you're like, I have an idea for a product, and of course I'm not going to talk about a revenue commitment in year one. But when you're a $200 million business and you're like, I have an idea for a new product and we're going to do 10 million in revenue next year from it. And that's where the problem starts. And that's the underlying piece with Tushman's research and mine. Is like very hard to learn while you're scaling. Okay, so what Tushman, the reasons are, there's a bunch of reasons around that, right? It's like, okay, I see this all the time at the big multinational companies. Like, we're launching a new product, so here's how it's going to go. We have the team's building it, and they're supposed to have it done by April 15th, and we have a conference on April 30th. We're going to announce this. We're going to have the website up in front. We're currently training the entire sales organ. All 1,000 of our field sales force will be fully enabled at the sales kickoff with our product and trained and ready to go. And we're going to hit the $20 million revenue target for the new product by the end of the fiscal year. And they launch the product, and guess what happens? They don't have product market fit. Very few people come up with an idea and have product market fit. And they've eliminated all the opportunity to do rapid test, iterate, learn situations. Now what they're doing is they spread the learning across the 1,000 person sales team. So there's no pattern recognition. We're involving salespeople who are not good learners, not good innovators. They just want to know like what the pitch deck is and go. Now we've decreased the productivity of the sales team because they used to spend 100% of the time selling products that we have proven. Now they're spending 30% of the time selling a product that doesn't work. Terrible. So Tushman says, let's do three things as we bring a new product to market. Let's develop an overarching strategy. Let's hold tension at the top, and let's embrace inconsistency. And let's bring those to life in the next 20 minutes here, starting with the first one, develop an overarching strategy. And like I said, I'm going to use HubSpot circa 2012 as an example. At the time, we were a pure marketing tech company. And we said, we're moving into sales tech. We're going to launch a CRM. I know that Salesforce.com is the biggest CRM provider out there. I know that they're an investor in our company. I know that we get 88% of our revenue from them. And I know all that's going to stop. So why are we doing it? Because they're going to eat our lunch if we don't. We got to go into the CRM sector. So we didn't sit there and say to the board, we're going to sign up to 10 million in revenue next year. We set ourselves up as if it was the first day of HubSpot with this product and gave ourselves the room. And Tushman says the first step is develop an overarching strategy. So guess what? At that moment, we decided to go into the CRM space. This is what our homepage looked like. Just an example. Create marketing people love. Amazing homepage for a marketing software company. But if you're evaluating a CRM, this is not the place for you. So we have to create an overarching strategy that encompasses both the legacy business, in this case, marketing, and where we're headed with sales. I think Tushman, the classic example he says is, had the railroad companies defined themselves as transportation companies, they wouldn't have been disrupted by airlines. Interesting. Right. So we had to move it to growth. Up until that point, for 8 years, we evangelized a concept called inbound marketing, and we made the word, we created the conference, we wrote the book, we owned the LinkedIn page, we owned the first 10 pages of Google, and it was great. But we weren't going to survive as an inbound marketing company with an inbound marketing strategy to launch a CRM, so we evolved around growth. And even I think to this day, a decade later, that growth meme, as they've moved into services and support and other tech stacks, has sustained. All right, number two, Tushman says, hold tension at the top. So most businesses, when they're launching a new product, let's use HubSpot as an example, they always said, great, big strategic decision. We're launching a CRM. We got to build it first. So Jerry in product is in charge of it. Now, Jerry is a 28-year-old product manager that's been at HubSpot for 4 years. This is what most people do and not what we did. This is the pothole. Jerry is a 28-year-old product manager out of MIT who's in charge of it, right? And we're going to give him 3 engineers and 2 designers and a data analyst and a QA person. They've got 4 months to build the CRM. Now, Jerry is a product manager. He reports to Julie, who's the senior product manager for that division. And she reports to Mary, who is the head of product for the US, and she reports to the chief product officer, Susie, who reports to the CEO. This is where the problem happens. Because now the little junior product manager in charge of the project needs access to the tech stack and access to resources and stuff to make the product successful. But everybody else is focused on the business that matters, the marketing software business. And the CRM team can't get anything done, and the project gets killed. Because the tension between pursuing the future strategy versus pursuing the known P&L is way at the bottom, and that person does not have enough political power. But instead, Tushman says, hold it at the top. Don't think about your org design by P&L size, but think about it by strategic value. So basically what we did at HubSpot was, instead of stuffing it down, this is what HubSpot looked like before. We had the CEO and we had functional leaders around the whole marketing business. And when we introduced the CRM, we put the marketing product leaders under our COO, and the general manager for the CRM reported the CEO. Right? This marketing product was doing 100+ million a year in revenue, The CRM was doing zero, but they reported to the CEO so the CEO could successfully put out the tension. Good. All right, and then we got to talk about the next one. But Sergio, are you in a place to talk? I think you've got an important question. You can unmute yourself and give it a shot. All right, interrupt me if you get to it, Sergio. But he says, any advice on how to correctly set expectations? Oh, go ahead, Sergio. I see you.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. What's your question?
Yeah. My question was, I guess you are coming to it, but it was more about any advice on how you can set let's say, how to set the right expectations to people who are expecting numbers, revenues.
Yep. Cool. It's a great
and still be able to get the right support.
Yes,
from people.
right. Yeah, it comes up all the time. Have to do this with boards all the time, especially like this day and age where I'm working a lot in B2B and always have. Some of you may be familiar with what's happening in the growth venture capital arena right now. It is insane. It's insane. I mean, like Tiger Global, SoftBank, and even like hedge fund folks, private equity folks who've typically not played in venture capital are moving in. Growth investors that typically invest when you're 50 million in revenue pre-IPO are investing when a company has $1 million in revenue and applying the same playbook. So it's just a mess out there. It's in a complete mess as an operator. Just with the conversation that's happening. To your point, Sergio, it's like, no, like you can't have time to build the product. We need 10 million in revenue. And so there's definitely like, basically the best way to do it is say, okay, we're going to lay out a foundation of milestones that ultimately get us to the $10 million that you're looking for. And we're hoping to have that by the end of the fiscal year. Okay. But let's all agree that it's going to take us, let's say we have a goal to find product market fit with this new product in 3 months. Okay. And here's how we're defining product market fit. Now I'm going to hold that point there on how we define product market fit to my next set of slides. But let's just say we introduced to them a very quantitative, internally driven metric of when we have product market fit. We're guessing we're going to have it in 3 months, at which time we will start adding salespeople at this pace. And I'm going to tell you how I think about that as well. Okay. And we're guessing that's going to happen on June 1st. And we're going to add salespeople at this pace. And if we do that, it is going to spit out 10 million in revenue by Q1 of next year. Now, I have no idea if we will have product market fit on June 1st, like I said. And this is how we're measuring it. If we have it on May 1st, we will go sooner. I will get you the 10 million sooner. But if it takes us till July or August 1st, I am not going to scale the team until it's had. Because if we scale a product that doesn't have product market fit, we're going to burn a bunch of money and probably flatline. So that's how I tell it to them, is I give them both sides. I'm like, this is just a guess. Here's how we're measuring it. It could happen sooner. I hope it does. And we're going to like climb up that tree as rapidly as possible. But it might happen later too. And this is how we as a board and management team are going to agree on measuring this. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question, Sergio. A related question that I often get to is, we made this mistake terribly at HubSpot. This is one of the mistakes we did make. And it's kind of related to the overarching strategy, actually. The first piece is our CEO was so excited about moving to the CRM sector. So excited. And of course, the lifeblood of the business was the marketing product, which was growing beautifully, like 80 to 100% a year as a 9-digit, company. And every company meeting, our CEO would get up and say how awesome he thought the CRM was coming along. And 98% of the company who works in the marketing product were like, do I even matter anymore? Right. So that's another thing we fell into that is advisable at this stage and related to the overarching strategy is, as CEO leading or general manager leading this, you need to give equal justice to the new thing, shiny object, and celebrating the core business. Because sometimes you see both sides. Like, we certainly were over celebrating the new thing, but I see businesses who are like, still business as usual. Look how awesome our core business is doing. Oh yeah, I forgot to talk about the CRM. It's doing great, by the way. It's like you got to kind of have an equal balance there. All right, throw the questions in there again too as stuff comes up, but let's do the third piece that he says. He says overarching strategy. He says hold tension at the top. And he says embracing consistency. What does that mean? What he means there is kind of to Sergio's question, is most businesses, when they do launch this product, their first North Star metric they measure themselves around is revenue. We have an idea to get into CRM. How do we know if the team is doing well? If they do 10 million in revenue. Huge pothole. Huge pothole. We didn't say that when we started the company with a brand new product. Our metric was product market fit. Then why, when we introduce a product when we're 100 million in revenue, a brand new product that we have no experience with, that we commit to a revenue number? Huge pothole. So that's what he says is measure your core business that you know through P&L and profits and all that stuff, revenue. But don't measure your new business and product in that way. Measure it by your pace of learning of product market fit. And that's where I want to introduce my science of scaling model on how do you know when you have product market fit and you're ready to scale, and how do you know how fast you are to scale within this piece. And I'll introduce a 3-pronged progressive phases that you want to go through: product market fit, then go to market fit, then growth and moat. I mean, if you want to get into this, what is product market fit? Put it in the Q&A, put it in the chat. I'm watching both. How do you, if you're on a board or you're the GM and you're like, yeah, that's what I get. That's the answer I get when I go out and do these speeches. I'm like, all right, when are you ready to scale? When you have product market fit? Brilliant answer. I mean, Eric Ries, Steve Blank, whoever created it, brilliant answer. But then you ask like 20 CEOs or 20 entrepreneurs what product market fit is, and you get 20 different answers. That's a problem. Juan says a % of meeting customer needs. Sergio says small scale test with relevant target audience to get a sense of its desirability. Good stuff. You can customer engagement for Travis. Yeah, I like that stuff, because half the time the answers I get are revenue and customer acquisition. I do not like that. I don't like that. That's market message fit. We can sell ice to Eskimos. Doesn't mean the Eskimos need the ice, right? All it means is you know how to sell. Does the product work? So your answers are good. Jacqueline says when the product demonstrates ability to deliver on unmet consumer need. These are all great. They're focused on the customer success and engagement. I just want something more quantitative. But I think if you do look at the Wikipedia page on product market fit, I think Andreessen or someone who's amazing, like, I mean, so much success, but he says something like, you just know when you have it, it's a pull, it's a feeling. I don't like basing extraordinarily critical questions of like when to scale on a feeling. I don't know. This is not the type of executor or operator I am. So I'm quite curious, Now, Doug says repeat business, which I like a lot, right? Because it's like, I sold them and they tried me out and they decide to buy me again. I like that a lot. And that's what I'll say, customer attention. Like in my world in B2B software and subscription, and like a lot of businesses from razors to music to groceries are bought on a subscription these days. So I don't know if this is like that much of a mini slice, but if you're not in a subscription business economy, then you can say more like customer satisfaction. That's fine. I like that a lot. I like Doug's answer. If I had to point to one metric, Priya says 70-80% fit with a test group of target users. So I think she's kind of getting at the fact that like, okay, I buy it. Like if I were to hinge my decision on product market fit on any metric, revenue, customer acquisition, customer retention, I like customer retention the most. I like repeat business, but it certainly elongates our test, learn, iterate cycles, because it takes a long time to see if someone rebuys your product. It takes a long time to see if someone sticks around, especially if we're dealing with like a year-long contract or something. And we don't have that time. We can't wait. So the advice I give at the early stages of a product development cycle in terms of embracing consistency is to define a leading indicator of retention, because the stuff that matters for product market fit to know for sure we have it is a lagging indicator that can take 6 to 12 months to know. We don't have that time. I don't think there's a universal leading indicator like an NPS score, or a 5-star review, or the fact that a product was set up or it's used, or a certain amount of usage, or a monthly active user. I mean, these are all great answers, but I find that it's very unique to the business and where some innovation and creativity is necessary, right? So I will pose a framework to you on how to think about it, and that's rooted in 3 variables. So if P% of customers do e-event in T time, or every T time, then you have product market fit. Let's make these real, okay? And I'll do them in the tech sector where I work, and these are pretty reasonably documented examples from unicorns. So Slack, 70% of customers send 2,000 team messages in the first 30 days, or every 30 days. I like that. Might have been what Priya was getting at. I mean, imagine if the founder of Slack was like, the first day, they were like, our first North Star metric is get 1 million in revenue. The type of business that comes out. Versus our first focus, our first North Star metric is to get 70% of our users to send 2,000 team messages every month. As a collaboration software, I think that's pretty important. Dropbox, everyone backs up their device in an hour. HubSpot, I know for a fact we caught this late because we had bad churn in the first few years of our business. We were fortunate to have 10 million in revenue when we analyzed it. And actually, it was more than that. It was like, I don't know, I think it was 10,000 customers. And so we could run like lots of permutations of what would predict long-term retention. And it turned out if they use 5 or more features in the platform, if they use the email tool plus the social media tool plus the landing page development tool plus 2 more, then they were going to stick around forever. If they only use 1, they were going to churn. That was like groundbreaking for the company. Groundbreaking. For a customer success manager that onboards customers, a 24-year-old, what's your job? Retain the revenue. How do you do that? What's your job? Get the customer to use 5 or more features. Now you're talking. And if they do, they'll be around forever. I like that for product market fit. Okay. And I like to measure it like this. I like to measure them in cohorts. And then Sergio, you can come in with your questions. Sergio, you're getting an A+ on participation today, by the way. So basically, what I'm showing here is like, let's go back to Slack. This isn't Slack's data, but just to bring it to life, right? Slack acquires 24 customers in January. How many of them sent 2,000 team messages in the first month? 3%. Oof, that's bad. After 2 months, 27% in the second month, 33% in the third month. And then it starts to go down. That's not good. Month 6, you're at 39%. If your customers send 2,000 team messages in your collaboration software, you have no future. And yet very few businesses are even measuring this. Revenue's going great. Customer acquisition is going great. Raise the Series A, raise the Series B, get more salespeople. So anyway, I just think like if you look down the column, yeah, fine. By September, they acquired 50 customers and 68% of them had achieved product market fit. All right. So I would say like that's when they got product market fit around here. Okay. So here's I have an engineering background, so I like tend to write the stuff more in like these, almost like stuff that looks like code. But that's what I think product market fit is define your lead indicator and what certain percentage hit it. Andrew Kaiser, do you want to go off mute? I don't know if Ryan, you need to like enable him or something. And then I know Jacqueline has a question and Sergio. We can take a couple.
I'm unmuted.
Yeah, go ahead, Andrew. What's your question?
So the question is, it sounds like the first time round, the leading indicator is a bit of a guess.
Yes.
And then, so I guess the question is, what's a good way to do that? And then as you start getting in actual retention and CLV data, how frequently should you update that to prevent, to be accurate, but also avoid organizational confusion?
Beautiful question. I would say in the beginning, you're absolutely right. It is a guess. I would say it's actually easy over time to know if you are right. I actually removed the slide that I show here, but it's essentially like, let's say you are a subscription business and that the subscription is 6 months long. And so, factually speaking, what the retention rate is at the 6 to 12 month time frame. Then you can actually look at those all those customers that were acquired 6 to 12 months ago, and you can see which ones hit that lead indicator of retention in the first month and what the retention rate is for each of those cohorts. So let's say that like 50 of them hit the lead indicator of retention and 98% of them are still around, and 10 of them did not, and like 10% of them around. Bingo, you got it. Like, so far, statistically speaking, that number does predict retention. So you're right. I mean, after you're doing this for 6, 12, 18 months, do that analysis and see if what you picked is right. Now, if you got it wrong, let's go back to the Slack example. Let's say, no, 2,000 team messages a month isn't actually correlating. Maybe it has more to do with the number of users. Maybe it's that if you have more than 5 users, that's more important. Well, guess what? We can actually analyze that today and know the answer. So if it's a year later and it's like, oh my gosh, we've been focused on the wrong thing. We've been focused on 2,000 team messages. First off, I would argue you're better than most of your peers, because most of your peers are focused on revenue, and that's not healthy. You are focused on collaboration, which is great. It's just that it's more about the users and less about the number of messages. And you now know that that's right because you have a data set that you can analyze. Okay. So hopefully I got that one. And Jacqueline, you want to go into CPG? Mm-hmm.
Sorry,
Yeah, go ahead.
Just wondering if you could provide an example for
a
CPG category, because if I work on developing diapers or shampoos, get a product market fit, when I have to invest in molds and line production and commit to inventories, just feels like I should have some earlier metrics like purchase intention and a consumer test.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's probably less applicable there, honestly. I've done it. I haven't done it for those as much. I did it for a baby stroller design, and I did it for a like a fashion apparel play on the dress side. And you're absolutely right. Like, you are constrained by more challenging manufacturing development constraints versus software where you can iterate within hours. I know for like the sweatshirt company, they were able to find a manufacturer that specialized in the iteration stage of the process. So they actually paid a significant premium for that, but it was less at that stage of the business. They weren't focused on unit economic profitability, but were instead trying to decide if like what particular, product design attributes were best for the market. Right. So that's kind of how they did it. And the metric they used was a net promoter score that they ran. So obviously, like, had someone come in and bought another sweatshirt, that would be beautiful, but it took some time, and not people were happy without having to buy another one, but they used a standard NPS. So hopefully there's something there, Jacqueline. I admit I don't have as much experience there, but as you read the material, I would love your insight if you want to shoot me a LinkedIn or something, so I can see if it applies or not. Preeti? And Abhinav, if you see, is saying that there are some people who actually provide that service now. So that's probably one place to lean in. Go ahead, Preeti.
Hello. Yes. Hi.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mark. So I've worked in a few startups, B2B, software and so on. And what tends to also happen is when you have new customers, everybody wants a pilot, and it's usually free, and you do see a lot of engagement and usage when the pilot is going on and so on, but the conversion tends to be harder, I think, right?
Sure.
And you see a lot of, the conversion rate is pretty low in terms of, when you're trying to really charge them, whatever they're supposed to pay. So it's sort of like, how do you mitigate that?
Yeah. There's a lot in there. I'd have to diagnose it because it could come in a lot of different flavors, but I'll tell you sequentially how I think about it related to pricing. And I'm going to show you later on how I use you can see what I'm building here is I'm building a very quantitatively driven framework to understand what phase you're in,
right,
based on your own data. And I'm going to show you later how I use my identification of my face to drive my go-to-market system design, one of which is my approach to pricing. Okay. And so what I like to do at this stage is I don't like to price for profitability, but commitment. Okay. And usually free is not a good answer. Now I get it that people will push back, and I don't like to give in, and I rarely need to. Okay. And because here's what happens is I could be basically saying, okay, Preeti, thank you so much. First off, I need to make sure that I run proper discovery, which a lot of salespeople need to do. It's kind of remarkable if you read some of the best early stage product development frameworks like the MOM test or Jobs to be Done and how to run that. And then you read the best books on selling and how do you do great qualification and discovery. They're the same. It's like very few people realize this, but like when you're at the ideation stage of your product and you're doing a really world-class customer interview on their preferences, pains, and challenges, and you compare that customer interview to, let's say you're successful and you scale up to a $100 million business and you listen to the sales call of one of your salespeople, one of your 500 salespeople that is meeting a customer for the first time, those two conversations are the same, very similar. And so as long as you've done proper discovery, and I can say to you, Preeti, so interesting, I'm just going to recap this back to you that, let's use Slack, for example. Right now you are, you're pretty disappointed with the, as you're scaling the collaboration that's happening in your organization. A lot of it's lost in email. You have a wiki that's not really used, and you're looking for a software that can embed over email, integrate it, and has a really remarkable UX to improve, the adoption by the team. And in fact, you measure that you could probably get a 10% productivity lift, especially across your engineer and R&D folks, if you're able to do that. Do I have all that right? And you're like, yeah, that's actually brilliant. Thank you so much for recapping that so concisely. Okay, great. Well, it turns out, let me just disclose to you that you're like the 12th, office, like operations leader that I've talked to in the last couple of months, and pretty much everyone's saying the same thing. So we've actually started to build it. And we expect to have this built. Let me explain to you what it is, but it matches what you were just asking for. We expect to have it built by April 1st. And we're just looking for 5 beta customers because we're going to charge $100,000 a year for this. We're looking for 5 beta customers that are willing to try it out and kind of work hand in hand with us. In exchange for that, we'll be giving them a 90% discount for the first year. So would you be interested in being one of those 5 pilot customers? I have a letter of intent that you could sign. For $10,000 a year. You'll get this software and we can go. And so again, free I don't like because everyone's going to say yes to free, but they're not going to like do the work to set it up. And I like this pitch because it naturally weeds out the later adopters who want to see ROI studies and case studies and all that kind of stuff. And it naturally attracts the brands and people within those brands who define themselves as innovators and wanting to be first to market. And they're okay with products that aren't like fully workable. Okay. So that's how I first phase. And if I'm doing a lot of free pilots and they're not converting, first off, I'm not setting that up right. I'm probably not pricing it for commitment. Okay. Now, if I've gone through and like, I feel like I have product market fit and go to market fit, I'm still doing a lot of pilots and I'm even charging $10,000 a year for them initially and try to upscale them. There's something wrong with my sales execution, or it actually could be my product market fit too. It's hard for me to diagnose. Usually what I'd look for at that point is, are some sellers, if one salesperson has a 40% conversion from pilot to sale and the other person has a 5%, it's probably more of a sales issue than a product and market issue. But if I've got 4 reps and they all have a 5%, probably more of a product issue. Okay. So I know that there's a little bit of stuff in there, price for commitment. How do you diagnose between a sales issue and a product issue? But those are some of the things I like to say. I guess the last thing I'll throw in there for you, Preeti, is the way you set up, and we teach a class on this at HBS on how you set up the pilot. We actually do a live experiential assignment on it. And like things like a common pothole is the salesperson's like, yes, nice, we got a pilot. I can move it forward in my pipeline. But we never discussed what is success in the pilot. If we achieve success, are you definitely buying? And what do they need to do for the pilot to be successful? A lot of pilots are run and set up without those 3 things in place.
Exactly.
And just setting those 3 things. Go ahead, Preeti.
No, this makes total sense. Thank you.
Okay, cool. You bet. All right, Serge, I'm going to keep going here. I know you got that other question, but I want to just make sure we can come back. So we're at 12:42. All right, so we talked about product market fit, and hopefully have a better definition of like what we mean, what Tishman means by embracing consistency, and what I mean by product market fit, getting away from squishy answers like, oh, it's just a feeling you have when lots of people are buying. Okay. Now, are you ready to scale? No, you need to go to market fit, right? Now, what's the difference there? Notice that during product market fit, I didn't talk about scalability or profitability. You know, it's hard to come up with an idea and to pitch it to someone and to get 80% of the people that buy it to see success with it. That is hard. I would guess like a couple percent of entrepreneurs for every idea that's come up with get to that stage. So, you know, like I would throw everything in the kitchen sink. Like I think Paul Graham, the founder of Y Combinator, I think co-founder of Microsoft, says, do things that are unscalable early. Brilliant. I know this company Drift that I mentioned I was on the advisor for. David Cancel was our chief product officer. He went off and started Drift. They just sold last quarter for $1 billion. And in the first 6 months of his business as CEO founder, a money time successful serial entrepreneur, had the humility and vision and knowledge to personally be flying to onboard customers that were paying him $50 a month. He, as CEO founder in the first phase of his business, was flying in a pre-COVID world to onboard customers that were paying him $50 a month. Terrible scale, beautiful product market fit execution. Do everything you can to get those cohort charts to look right, because it's so hard to get an idea to look like that. Once we do, we need to prove scalability, right? And oftentimes we talk about unit economics, right? And there's a bunch of, there's the typical like marginal revenue, contribution margin, which applies everywhere. I'll just use this, you can use whichever one you want. And what we have to do here is we have to also understand the leading indicators of good unit economics as well, so that we don't have to wait 4 to 6 to 8 months for them to surface, but know today, based on the way our marketing and sales engine are going, that we're on pace to hit it. So I'm going to use an example, choose whatever unit economics flavor you want. I'm going to use LTV to CAC greater than 3, which is one that's commonly used in subscription businesses today. Now, I can't talk to a 23-year-old account executive and they say, what's your job? And I set your LTV to CAC above 3. They don't know what that means. So I have to algebraically extract that goal back to more tangible things, like how many sales calls is that a week, and what's the close rate on that, and what's the average sales price, right? So LTV can often be expressed as ACV, the annual contract value. How much does this customer pay you per year, times the gross margin divided by the churn rate. And the cost to acquire a customer, the CAC, is the cost to generate the lead plus the cost to sell the lead. And the cost to generate the lead is the lead that became the customer is the cost per lead divided by the close rate. So if my cost per lead is $100 and I close 100% of those leads, my demand gen cost per customer is $100. But if my cost per lead is $100 and I close 10% of them, my demand gen cost per customer is $1,000, right? But we've extracted back to a more understandable metric. My sales cost is how much do I pay my salesperson every month or quarter divided by how many customers they bring in. And the number of customers they bring in is how many leads they get or create themselves times the close rate. So now I've taken that right side metric of unit economics and extracted it back to stuff that's conceptualized, and I can just devise a business model that like, hey, listen, if our average sales price is $20,000 a year and our cost per lead is $1,000 and we close 5% of them, then it spits out good stuff. And now I just have to plot it. So as long as our blue line stays above the red line every week or every month or every quarter, our business will be scalable with positive unit economics. And that's go to market fit, right? So I would argue that product market fit is correlated to long-term retention, and you need to devise the leading indicators to retention and organize it into the cohort chart shown there. And I'd argue that once that's achieved, sequentially, you move on to go-to-market fit, which is to prove, because at product market fit, you just prove that when you put 20 customers into your funnel, that 80% of them are going to be successful. And at go-to-market fit, you prove that you can do that with good unit economics profitably. And I've set up lead indicators with both of those. Okay, now you're ready to scale. That's what I would say. You're ready to scale when you have product market fit and go-to-market fit. And we've instrumented these in highly quantitative ways based on the performance of our business, not some other investor's idea of like a certain revenue target or something else like that. Okay. Now the question is how fast? So great, we have that. We set up the cohort, it looks beautifully. We set up the dashboard on go-to-market fit, it looks beautifully. We have product market fit, we have go-to-market fit, let's scale. The foundation of the house is built beautifully. How fast do we go? I'll tell you what I see out there 90% of the time in the B2B side is they'll be like, let's triple revenue. How are we going to do that? We're going to hire 15 salespeople in January. How many salespeople did you hire last quarter? 1. Okay. How many lead sales opportunities were created? 20. Okay. Where do they come from? From the board's network. Okay. And now we're going to hire 12 salespeople in January. How many interviews do you think that is? Who's going to do those? Where are you going to find the candidates? And for them to hit their number, they need 200 sales, and you generated 20 from the board's network last month. So where are these demands going to come from? And do you actually know what the average salesperson to manager ratio is in the industry to make sure that these people are onboarded and trained correctly? It's 7-to-1. So now you need 2 sales managers. So who are they? And where are you getting them? The Excel jockeys fall apart so badly here. But it's so simple. We need 10 million in revenue and each salesperson produces $1 million. So we need 10 salespeople. Yeah, well, let's talk about how this actually works mechanically. So the first thing is that pace is not, the scaling decision is not a one-time decision at the beginning of a fiscal year to like hire a bunch of reps right at the beginning and cross our fingers and absorb them. It's a pace. Because just like we had to learn product market fit and learn go-to-market fit, we have to learn our growth mechanisms too. Like the quality of your sales hiring in the first quarter of scale is 1/10 the quality of your sales hiring 2 years later. So why do it all at once? Can you double your demand gen in a quarter? Probably not. How fast can you grow it? Let's try. So we have to think about our pacing at our scale as a pace, not a one-time like commitment of like, let's pour $50 million into the marketing budget, or let's add 20 salespeople next month. So why don't we think about it this way? Let's add 2 salespeople every other month. And let's do that for 6 months. How do we know if we're going too fast or too slow? We watch the lead indicators. Let's call that our speedometer. Let's call the lead indicator of retention and the lead indicator of unit economics our speedometer. If we hire 2 reps every other month for 6 months and the speedometer stays green, we're good. Let's go faster. Let's add 2 reps a month every month, and let's watch it for 6 months. If it stays green, let's add 4 reps every month. It's going to break, I guarantee you. I've never seen a company not break. But we will know 9 months in front of our in head of our peers, because our peers, the boards at our peers are deciding if we're going too fast or too slow based on the P&L, the quarterly P&L. And the quarterly P&L is probably what was happening in the business 9 months ago. As CRO of HubSpot, I knew 9 months in advance of when the board was going to be up my shorts. I had a bad pipeline and hiring in my quarter. I knew. The board didn't know. The board didn't know for 9 months. what a terrible way to run a business. The speedometer is telling me what's happening today. So 4 reps a month, do it for 6 months. And if that stays green, 8 reps a month. And if that stays green, 16 reps a month. And guess what? You're a unicorn and you did it in a very quantitative, predictable way. Okay. All right. So to Pretty's question, just quickly, and then I know we've taken a bunch of questions along the way. I'm hopefully have a couple, but we've talked about, like, now that you know where you are, what impact does that have on your go-to-market system design, right? So like we talked about doing unscalable things early, and like, honestly, the ideal salesperson at the product market fit is not like your 10th sales hire. Your 10th sales hire is coin operated. It's like, give me the playbook and give me the leads and let me go make a lot of money and make you all a lot of money. Terrible hire at the product market fit stage. They're going to go pitch 10 customers and tell you it's not working and it's useless. You need someone that's kind of like half product marketer, half like account executive, maybe even a piece customer success manager. You need that athlete to give feedback. Go out, talk to 10 customers, and then give the feedback and patterns to the engineers, right? And let's not talk about scale demand gen. Our networks are fine at this point. Let's not talk about optimal price. We talked about price for commitment. Let's not talk about the comp plan for the reps. It's the wrong conversation. It's the right conversation to go to market fit. We got to produce positive unit economics. We need a playbook. We need someone to build it. Probably like 3 or 4 reps at this point that like change, that like rapid change and want to build a playbook and work on process. And comp plan and pricing model and one demand gen channel is absolutely necessary. And then when we get to the growth and fit phase, we got to think about different experiments, segments like we're talking about today, like which ones do we scale and which ones do we learn? And we talk about managing multiple marketing channels, which I know a lot of you know how to do. We need to add a sales management layer, et cetera. Okay. So hopefully this brought to life Michael's framework of an overarching strategy, tension to the top, and embracing consistency. And hopefully you have some input on my framework on science of scaling. I have a 45-page ebook if you want to drill into it. It's linked here. I can get these slides to the team. It's on my venture capital firm's website. It's kind of the underlying thesis of Stage 2 Capital. If you want to know, like, Stage 2 Capital is we're the first VC firm running back by CMOs and CROs. So we have like 300 CROs and CMOs that are our investors from pretty much all the unicorns in the software sector. And so just kind of bringing this work to the early stage ecosystem. And thank you, Ryan, for mentioning the book. If you want to check that out, it's kind of like how I implemented like modern sales data-driven practices at HubSpot. I wrote it like 8 years ago. I'll probably publish the Science of Scaling as another book. But just so you know, I don't know if any of you are involved in build.org. They're an awesome organization that mentor the worst performing city located high schools in the country, kids that just did not have the deck that probably many of us were dealt at life, kids that end up on the street and in gangs, and they teach them entrepreneurship in their freshman year and try to get them into college. And 99% graduate high school and 85% go to college. So like the program works awesome. Look it up, get involved. 100% of the proceeds are donated to them. It's been over $100,000 so far. So thank you for the support. And if you do decide to buy the book, you're helping out Build. I don't know, Ryan, if any trickled in, or I know we got 5 minutes.
Cool. I saw one come in from Doug Finley. Do you want to jump in and ask a question here? See if we can get Doug off of mute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, so it was just as you were scaling HubSpot, how did you balance the kind of revenue versus recruitment formula?
Yeah.
Was that all based on the leading indicators that you were talking about, or do you have another way?
Absolutely. So the lead indicators were measured. You can actually check out this sheet here, a bottoms up growth model. So the lead indicators was part of it. Like we had to slow it down if any of those broke, and the framework allowed us to diagnose exactly where it broke, whether it was in sort of more of the product side or on the sales side. But our pace of growthing, this bottoms up framework, because a lot of people will just say, okay, we want to go from 50 million to 100 million, and they'll just take the new revenue acquisition divided by the reps quotas and figure out how many reps they need. But what this does is it factors in, this model factors in things like how quickly can we hire reps? So if we've been hiring reps at like 3 a month, we don't want to go to 8, right? We can probably go up to maybe 4 or 5 and prove that. It factors in ramp time. So a lot of people don't, when they model, they don't like factor in that when you hire a rep, they don't like produce right away. It takes them like often 3 months to learn the product and 3 months to build the pipeline. So let's make sure we have that in. A lot of people don't even factor in rep attrition. The average attrition rate in the sales org is 40%. It's hard to build a business that way, but you should at least model 15 to 20 to account for that. So if you just look at the bottoms up model, Doug, that's a very detailed way on how we thought about it and how I advise a lot of companies today around it. And if it's okay, Ryan, I want to take that anonymous one on how do you think about lead indicators for big ticket? I need to add a slide on that because it comes up a lot. So we have a couple companies that are selling, $1 million products. And so like this chart doesn't work as well, the cohort chart, right? They have 7 customers and they're doing 7 million in revenue, right? So we're not going to look like a cohort analysis. But what we do is we look at each customer is so valuable that we agreed at the board level on a 5-dimension analysis of each customer. All right, a green, yellow, red on 5 dimension. 1 dimension was like how much transactions they were putting through. 1 dimension was whether they were set up or not. 1 dimension was the severity of their support tickets. 1 dimension was the breadth of our organizational usage. And 1 dimension was the strength of our champion, right? So we had agreed at the board level on those 5 things. And at the beginning of the board meeting, we put up the 7 customers with all 5 dimensions and show green, yellow, or red and talk about the changes, right? So it's a very different conversation, but along the same lines of focus on customer engagement and success, and revenue will come as opposed to revenue being our North Star. Okay, Ryan?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Mark. We're just at time. Thank you, everybody, for joining. This is a great talk, and thank you for your thoughtful questions.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.